Okay, his actual born day was yesterday. Thank you. So call it whitewashed, colonialized, whatever we want to call it. People don't tell the truth about Dr. King because the truth about Dr. King actually hurts, especially for people who want this society to be better. How you doing, PPC? Thanks for being on. And Lifeline Apparel LLC. Thank you. So people don't really honor Dr. King because we don't really tell the truth. Because if we were to tell the truth about Dr. King was not loved while he was here, and many of us are trying to love him now. But many of us, whether part of the diaspora or not, many of us did not really have love for Dr. King while he was here. If we just be honest about it, many people who are out here telling you today all the love and respect and everything that they had for King really did not have love and respect and honor for Dr. King. If we just be honest about it, many of us have not. Or we come from situations. We have a lot of teachers and a lot of people today who are going to tell us about Dr. King and really did not care about him, do not care about him, and do not honor him. It's just, it's fashionable, it's trendy, right? It's the trend now. Like it's a trend. Like music comes out as now as a trend. It's not something that's built to last. What happened with Dr. King is trendy for many, and so people follow the trend of saying that we'll honor Dr. King, and he deserves better. And so I want to honor some of the things that he said because he's become so whitewashed that many of us of the diaspora have now said that we don't care for Dr. King, even though he shed his blood for what he believed in, and many of us have not. And by the way, I'm not saying we need to go out to prove ourselves and shed our blood. I'm just saying we haven't yet. He shed his blood, and we're out here, a lot of us, trying to deny his legacy. And so, in doing so, we do him a disservice. Are there some things that he did, or did he get caught up in some things? Did he think that, hey, let me make sure that I just do play nice, try to get people together and see what happens? Sure. But remember that Dr. King himself made it a point to say, right, that I fear that I brought my family, right, or I feel I brought my people into a burning house. He integrated us into a burning house. Let's not forget that he knew what was going on. Let us not forget that Dr. King was the same person to say that it is a cruel joke to tell a man to pull himself up by his own bootstraps when he has no boot. Let us not forget about Dr. King, that Dr. King, while they were marching up in 1963, when he gave the I Have a Dream speech, that wasn't even his initial speech. He went into that when he realized the crowd who had been there and marching had been singing all day, some of them not even eating. He realized that they were getting restless. And so it was suggested to him by Sister Mahalia Jackson that he tell him about the dream. She screamed it out, tell him about the dream, Malcolm, because she had heard the dream speech before. And she, being an entertainer, being a singer, but an entertainer nonetheless, being a somebody who sung for the Most High, she still recognized, she could recognize that he wasn't getting through because people were kind of done. And so she screamed, tell him about the dream. And so that's when he started the speech. But remember, as they marched up, he said, we're coming, and we're coming looking for our check. He was talking about we are owed some kind of restoration, some kind of restitution, some kind of reciprocity, something to be able to get us back on place. Some would even say that he would declare he's something that many people who are asking for reparations now, it's interesting that they would speak poorly of him, but he was basically saying we're coming and we deserve these reparations. And how you doing, Sister Beverly? Doesn't say so already. And hey, babe, how you doing? My wife is on the Honorable Maya. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. How you doing, Sharis? And everybody coming on, right? Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said stuff like, whites, and he used the term whites. I'm not saying whites. I'm quoting his terminology. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, whites believe that they don't have to learn anything. They think they know everything that there is. And so since they think they know everything that there is, they're staying in ignorance, causing us not to change and not ever even rolling up their sleeves to think that they have to put in work. This is part of the Dr. King that nobody discusses, but this is real. This is somebody we should honor. We should honor these words as well. We act like, by the way, it's a bad thing that he says that he thinks that little black boys and little white boys should be able to hold hands and be unified. That's an actual noble goal. Whether you believe it's depending on what your belief system is, fine, right? But that's a noble goal, is it not? That human beings all come together, including their children, for generations to come. But for some reason, he gets dishonored. And tonight we take time out to honor our ancestor. Um, if we be honest, Dr. King said stuff like, hey, you taught when you say black people need to get themselves together because look at what our people did. He said that other people were brought over here and they were brought over here not being slaves. They weren't brought over on slave ships, or we know some of us, we already know that we were here already. Even before slavery, we were traveling over here already before slavery, depending on how you want to look at it, either way, right? However, he made a point to say, look, you guys weren't brought over as slaves, you guys were brought over as immigrants. Now, if we want to be honest, a lot of them were actually brought over in prison or thrown over here into a prison colony, and people in England didn't care what happened to them. That they started making money. Then England wanted to take over, right? But King's point is still valid that these people came over. They'll keep talking about pull yourself by your own bootstraps. How you doing, Shisa Israel? How you doing, Denise? These people who are saying pull yourself up by your own bootstraps won't admit that, like, hey, wait a minute, you guys were brought over as immigrants. A lot of you were paid to come over. You were given land. You were paid to be given land. You were paid to have somebody come out and teach you how to make sure that you could farm on that land. And you were given it because basically you weren't black. While black people still were being enslaved. And then even afterwards, we're still being enslaved, just in chattel slavery due to the 13th Amendment, or making sure that they still had to be sharecroppers, or still these things that had to happen. But you were given that. And so that's why Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. putting some respect on his name. That's why he also made it a point to say, since you were given that, that you have to stop this false rhetoric that says that it was just great Protestant work ethic of your people that helped you to be able, and your Christian value that helped you to build this. You built what you built off of the backs of those who actually built it. You would call them slaves, right? This is what Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about and marched for and died for. Let us not forget that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was called a communist. I'm not talking about in the 1950s. I'm not talking about in 1961, 62. In 1963, when he marched, people hated Dr. King. But John F. Kennedy needed Dr. King to make sure that he wasn't going to look bad, because remember, when before the march became the peaceful march, it was going to be a grassroots movement that spread out to the US, and black people were coming from all over the country to ensure that they were going to tear Washington, D.C. up. They were going to lay down on runways so that planes couldn't take off. They were going to do all types of stuff. And JFK asked Dr. King to come in, and King, not realizing that maybe that's something that needed to happen, he knew that JFK and them were going to kill his people. And so he made a decision. And yes, did he get paid for that decision? He sure did, but he made a decision. He thought it was better to make sure that they marched than they bled. Now, you can choose whichever one you want to choose, but he made a choice. But once again, while marching, he said, "We're coming, looking for our check." How you doing, Sister Cherise? Right, and that's the mindset. Remember, we were talking about a couple nights ago, or whenever it was. I guess it would have been Friday. We got to stop this thing, even with the whole slave ship thing. Like, I don't care how many people they took. You got to recognize they took a mindset. And Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was doing the best with the mindset he had, but they took a mindset from us. I don't care if, remember, I told you, if they steal one tree, like, watch this. If there's a tree in Africa, I know there are people that were already indigenous to here. I already said that, right? But just to kind of catch you up on what I'm talking about, if there's a tree in Africa and you steal the fruit, you like the fruit, you eat it, and then you steal the seed, you plant the seed, and that seed becomes 5,000 trees in the United States of America, right? How many trees did they steal? Somebody would say they didn't steal any trees at all, because you're worried about the number. I don't care if they only took 10,000 people on ships. If those 10,000 people were stolen and gave birth to many, then guess what that means? That means that all the fruit and all the seed of that fruit is African. So no matter what your art, wherever you fall in line with the argument, whether you feel it's 100 million that were taken, or whether you feel it was 10,000 taken, whatever side, whether you want to believe people were already coming back and forth, whether you want to say that nobody came over, whatever, which is there's just not evidence to say that. Like, I know people want to keep saying that nobody knows that story, but go over there and they know for a fact. Go over to the point of no return and stood where your ancestors stood. I stood there, right? And I don't want to get upset because I kind of got a little frustrated when talk about this on Friday. But go back and stand at the point of no return and see where your ancestors went. Go to Baltimore and stand in a building made out of the ship that Kunta Kinte came out of. Go to Annapolis Harbor and look at the statue of Kunta Kinte speaking to the children there before you even knew who Kunta Kinte was. How you doing, Sister Mary? See, it's easy for us if we're not careful to forget our ancestors, but we don't forget you, Martin. Not tonight. I almost did because I don't celebrate these holy days, and they've tried to make you into a holy day, right? But don't forget. How you doing, Sister Shima? If I didn't say so already, don't never forget. They don't want you to forget September 11th. Don't forget what MLK did. Don't forget what he said. He didn't just say, "Oh, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last." Don't forget that he wasn't killed when he was shot in the head. He was strong. He made it to the hospital. They didn't know if he would live. They didn't know if he would die, but they figured it was better to kill him rather than have him come back or for him to die a martyr, right? Or somebody who was trying his best to limp around for the rest of his life, but he still was a reminder of what he used to be. So they smothered him in the hospital bed, written in the book. Matter of fact, go look it up. His family sued the state and they won. Right? They didn't win the criminal case. They won the case, where they won when they sued him, and they won. How you doing, Big Roy? So this is something that we know, right? And we got to remember this. So don't we have been taught, right? And so I want to also make it clear, just like we made it clear when Bill Russell died. I want to make it very clear about when MLK passed away. People didn't have nothing cool to say about it. Matter of fact, when MLK died, people there was a survey taken. You know that they do. I'm sorry, what is that called when they come to your house and they take the survey, they knock on your door, they ask you to fill it out. A census. Census was done back then. How you doing, Sister Cynthia? And guess what they said in the census? The year before he died, the supposed summer of love, which there were more marches then and more stuff that happened then than happened in 2020. Y'all remember 2020 and all the marches? More happened then, but they tell you it's the summer of love. They want you to forget what was really going on. Right? Yeah, he was labeled as a domestic terrorist. I'm not even 100% sure how long. Probably was labeled as one after he died. Shows the craziness of this stuff, right? Because they can't take it off the books until a certain like a quarter. So they probably had him on longer than he lived. In all honesty, if you know how the government works, if you ever done some of that stuff quarterly with the United States government, you know how that works. But at the end of the day, King was actually uh he was somebody that they called a communist. And so the year before he died, they said he was asking for too much too soon, including his own diaspora. There were some of us who said he's asking for too much too soon. What did he ask for? Treat us as human beings, allow us to have jobs. Then he started talking reparations. That was way off track. They didn't like that. But he was saying, like, treat us like human beings. And they said he was asking for too much too soon. And I know people want to, I'm sorry, in the year that he died, guess what they said about him? When they did a census about him, Americans, everyday Americans. How you doing, Sister Monica? Guess what everyday Americans said about him? They said that he was still asking for too much too soon. He was still a terrorist. He was messing up their way of life. And after he died, when they did a census, they said that he got what he deserved. They said he shouldn't have pushed it too much. That's what Americans said. Exactly, right? Make that make sense. Now, here's the story that they don't want to tell you, and this is why we have to honor King and still fighting the fight. Because they want you to believe this, but I'm here to tell you it don't work like this. You ready for this? They want you to believe that that's old. Why are you bringing up old stuff? 1968, King killed. 1968, Black Panther Party, Chicago, Fred killed. Why do you bring that up? Why do you talk about it? If you talk about it, you must be dealing with it. Or you're the one bringing it up. Everybody else forgot about it. It was King wouldn't have wanted you to bring it up. You hear weird stuff like that. But you know what? Let's do some math. Let's just count from 1968 to now and see how many years that is. Let's see how long ago that was. 78, 88, 98, 2008, 2018, 5 more years to 2023. 55 years. It's really probably more like 54 and a half. I don't remember the exact date that he died, but probably not in January. So let's just say to be safe, 55 years ago, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dies. Do you know anybody who's 55 years old? Is anybody here 55 years old? Do you happen to have any parents that might be 55? Do you happen to have any grandparents that might be 55 years old? Right? Do you know anybody that can tell you where they were when Dr. King died? Like you can tell somebody about September 11th, they can tell you when Dr. King died. That was their September 11th. Yeah, some of us are 55, right? Okay, so at 70, you were 15, or 14 or 15. There you go, right? So how is it so old that it doesn't affect us? Stop talking about it. But there are people old enough not only to have been born when they was there, but old enough to tell us where they were. And some of those people keep telling you that things have not changed. Some would tell you that they've gotten worse. This is why we should honor Dr. King, not just because, like we were taught in school, that he said, I have a dream. That was 63. That was 5 years. You know how much politically he changed in 5 years? He was speaking so much different just by 1965. 1965, he was talking about, I fear that I've integrated my people into a burning house. He was telling you that there were two Americas, still preaching it up until his death. And he wasn't talking about the public citizen versus the private citizen. People don't even honor that, right? And once again, what was his ultimate goal? That everybody come together. But he started realizing that, hey, I've got to start taking care of us because we're so out of pocket. We're so messed up in our mind and our mentality. We're not even in a righteous standard to look somebody else in the eye. That's why Malcolm X, before he was killed, 65, 3 years earlier, he made a point to say whites can help us, but they can't join us. Why? Because there can't first be black-white unity till there's black unity. What was he saying? If we can't look ourselves in the eye and get these things together and get over our trauma, we're not any value to anybody else. How you doing, Brother Eugene? We honor Dr. King because of what he stood for. Dr. King didn't just stand for, hey, I'm happy. I'm ready to get shot for you, and that's it. And everybody, when he got shot, everything became better. Don't forget, Ronald Reagan becomes president because in the 70s, he starts massacring Black Panther Party members. That's what got him where he was. Don't forget that Bill Clinton, he becomes president. People are not sure about him. They're trying to vote for him, whether they be Republican, Democrat, or Independent, because they can't stand Ross Perot, they can't stand Dan Quayle, but they think he's lenient on crime. What does he do? He goes to somebody who's wrongfully imprisoned, more than likely. We don't know for sure, but more than likely wrongly imprisoned with a mental health issue, right? They would have called it back then mental retardation. And he goes and he has him while he's on death row. He says, kill him. He comes back on the campaign trail. He says, look how strong I am on crime. And now everybody, including our diaspora, is ready to label black folk as super predators. He said, your mom can remember. Yeah. So we have to recognize that somebody trying to tell us that this is too much. If you were 58, if you were 60 years old at the time, you probably remember, even as a toddler, because that was something crucial. And you probably might remember, depending on where you lived, you might remember when people were, I don't know, what did they call us? When they said that we were doing criminal activity, they said that we were tearing everything apart and we were raiding everything and we were doing things. Yeah, when people get angry, they speak like that. Remember, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he called looting and rioting. He said rioting is the language of the oppressed. But we don't honor that when he said that. Yeah. See, King, if you don't know about King, King was studying Gandhi, but Gandhi was somebody that didn't even like black folk. The more you learn about Gandhi, you realize maybe I shouldn't go the Gandhi route. It's like when they talk about Gandhi, they didn't like Gandhi either, by the way. But they like Gandhi more than King. But Gandhi was sitting up there telling people when he was in South Africa, especially, he was busy telling people that, hey, we're the same as you guys. Remember, we got that Alexandrian DNA and stuff in us. Because people forget Alexander the Great, last empire, last part of his empire, it dies off in India. Oh, okay, no problem. Happy born day, mom, wherever mom's is. I don't know if she's listening. Right, but I'm just saying today we honor Dr. King. We honor his legacy. We don't just honor the part that fits into a nice little bow or a nice little box. We honor who he is, and we're thankful for him, and we're thankful for the life that he gave, and we're thankful for him being a monument and a testimony to that somebody can change, even within churches, even within wherever, that people can begin to look at stuff and say injustice, as Sister Soldier said, an injustice anywhere is an injustice anywhere. Or is it injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere? I might be saying that wrong. So we honor you, Dr. King, right? I'm in the room, so I can't necessarily pour one out for you, but I'll take a drink to you, a drink of water in copper cup, but you would probably been okay with that. I honor you. I appreciate you. We thank you for your sacrifice, and we live on to make sure that our people become free as possible. I said it right the second time. Thank you. Right. So we honor what King did, and we honor him by our lives. We honor him by stepping up for ourselves. And we make sure that we are okay with saying, speaking out on injustice. Because if a Christian pastor said it was all right to do so, then white folks should be okay with it. And if not, you just be hypocritical again, and it's all fine. And before y'all guys get me up, he's racist. Watch myself long enough to realize I comprehend it's a colonial and social construct, but you get the context. All right. But thank y'all. Appreciate you. Mondays for next couple of months, I'm gonna be getting off a little early. We got to get ready to go into class. So those who have Sovereignty One, I will connect with you ASAP. Those of you who for whatever reason I didn't get in contact with. I think Doll I am. I saw you, and there's a couple other people that need to get texted the link if I didn't get your if we didn't straight up email it to you already. But we're gonna start at 8:30, Sovereignty One. We look forward to talking to you guys soon. This week, remember, so starting this week is the classes. They're all going on for 2 months. We do have a suggested donation that we asked for. If you'd like to be able to get more information on it, then let us know. But we're doing right now Mondays, Sovereignty One, Sovereignty Two. Tuesdays, Hebrew characters. Wednesdays, basic Hebrew. Thursdays, reading and writing Hebrew. Fridays, herbalism 1. Saturdays, speaking Hebrew. That's this semester. If there are other classes we have, but they just won't be taught this semester. If you'd like to be able to take them, we can set up some one-on-one sessions. Contact us. I'll say the number real quick before we get ready to get off. 202-599-7312. Again, it's 202-599-7312. Again, I say 202-599-7312. Last time, that's 202-599-7312. Baba Kasha, Nicole, we appreciate you. Barak Allah Acham Yahava. Please check out my wife on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And to everybody who's on, please be hearers of this word and doers simultaneously. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember, as always, Yashadam, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. Peace.